Good evening and thanks for joining us. One plane carrying Canadians is finally on its way from Wuhan, China tonight, the center of the new coronavirus outbreak. 176 Canadians, including children, are on their way home. It's a plane chartered by the Canadian government. A second plane, an American flight, had some spare seats and offered them to Canada. It is expected to leave Wuhan soon. All the Canadians on board are expected to end up in Trenton, Ontario, at a Canadian Forces base that is prepared to quarantine them for 14 days. There are two new presumptive cases in British Columbia tonight, a man and a woman in their 30s. Both were visiting from Hubei province and were in close contact with the second confirmed case in British Columbia. There remains uncertainty about how this virus spreads. And today, Canada's Chief Public Health Officer advised anyone who has been in Hubei province recently should self-isolate.
What we're recommending is for those travellers from Hubei to self-isolate from the 14 days after departure in case they begin to develop symptoms and they then will already be distant themselves from others.
The evacuees on those flights from Wuhan are expected to arrive in Ontario tomorrow, and public health officials, plus members of the Canadian Forces, say they'll keep them as safe and comfortable as possible throughout their quarantine. As Mike Le Couteur reports, they'll still have to go through rigorous screening before they can go home.
Right now, we're just anxious to get on the flight, I think.
You can't see the smile behind his mask, but you can certainly hear the relief in Bin Zhang's voice. After days of waiting, he was finally at the airport with his wife and two kids, getting ready to board the Canadian government charter back home.
The fact that the plane has landed, it's right in front of us. I think it's pretty reassuring that we'll be able to get to go home.
Zhang said the process at the airport was well organized, with Chinese officials giving them thermal scans and asking them to fill out health questionnaires. It wasn't smooth sailing for everyone, though. Annie Wang's family was stopped at a police checkpoint when the Canadian plane was delayed Wednesday. They decided not to turn around and just stayed at this gas station parking lot.
So we spent the night in the car. That's very unpleasant experience, to be honest.
Megan Millward got some good news. She wasn't sure her husband would be allowed on the plane because he holds permanent resident status, not Canadian citizenship. But the whole family got on the flight to Canada. And on board, each passenger is being closely monitored by health officials.
Any passenger who falls ill on the plane will be isolated on the plane.
Now, if it happens, that person will be taken to a Vancouver hospital when the aircraft stops for refueling. Same goes for the dozens of Canadians who managed to get on an American plane. All Canadians will end up here at CFB Trenton for a 2-week quarantine.
The National Microbiology Mobile Lab will be on site to test any symptomatic travelers.
As for the rest of the Canadians still in China, a third repatriation flight is in the works.
That plane is currently scheduled to depart Wuhan on the 10th of February and to land back in Canada on the 11th of February.
The only problem, they're running out of room at CFB Trenton, and government officials admit they're not sure where passengers from that third flight will go into quarantine. Donna?
All right, lots to work out. Mike Le Couteur in Ottawa, thanks. It has now been 14 days since some parts of China were first quarantined, and yet there are still new cases every day. The head of the World Health Organization said today much about the virus remains a mystery and that experts still do not properly understand its transmissibility or severity.
To put it bluntly, we're shadow boxing. We need to bring this virus out into the light so we can attack it properly.
According to Chinese media, there are now more than 31,000 confirmed cases around the world, the vast majority still in China. And that includes a newborn, the youngest case recorded so far. At least 638 people have died, all but one of the deaths in China. And thousands of people enjoying vacations on board cruise ships are now held captive on them. They've been ordered to stay inside their cabins for 14 days. The Diamond Princess, carrying 3,700 people, is in Yokohama Harbor. Japan's health ministry now says 61 people on board have tested positive for the virus, including at least 2 Canadians. And on the World Dream, 3,600 passengers and crew are quarantined in Hong Kong Harbor. 8 people have tested positive. And a third ship, the Westerdam, is at sea near Taiwan with 2,300 people stranded on board. There are no confirmed cases on that ship, but it had made a stop in Hong Kong. And the owners say because of that, Japan, its final destination, has refused it permission to dock. It highlights the perils of contagious disease on cruise ships. Redmond Shannon explains how people are coping.
Another 10 passengers removed from the Diamond Princess, among them 2 Canadians. The Japanese government is keeping thousands on board, including over 200 Canadians.
We're now trying to spend our time reading, watching television, and just trying to stay generally positive amidst a 2-week-long quarantine.
Many passengers are demanding more information.
And what happens when we finally get back to the UK? Are we going to be put in quarantine yet again for another 14 days? You know, these are questions I need answered.
Given the uncertainty with this coronavirus, the Canadian government isn't being definitive.
If they've already been on the ship for 14 days and were well, then we don't expect that these individuals will then be of a risk to the general population.
In Hong Kong, around 30 Canadians are stuck on this ship, but no cases are confirmed.
My understanding is that they're screening passengers, and once this screening is completed, obviously we'll have a better picture as to what kind of assistance we can provide and what are the local health authorities want to do.
And now a third ship with several Canadians on board is stranded at sea near Taiwan, with reports of one suspected case. Japan is joining the list of countries that won't accept the Westerdam.
We're getting more information through global news than from the captain directly. We don't know where we're going to end up, how long it's going to take to get there, and what arrangements we can make to get home.
The ship's owner says it's looking into alternative plans. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.